Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Here we are at the beginning of yet another week. How are you? I'm a little bit excited as usual. The main reason being I've nearly finished my podcast course where I'm going to teach a class full of virtual students from all over the world and helping each and every one of them have 8 published podcast episodes in January 2019. And also, I've just heard that I'm going to be travelling to Barcelona to cover the Magento Live event. So I'm quite excited about getting some good interviews for the podcast there too. But enough about me. This show's not about me. It's about you guys listening, and it's about getting a great guest onto this show. And today, I want to chat to Paul Appleby, and he's the CEO of a company called Kinetica. Now, Paul appeared on my radar when I read that Paul believes that the data that is generated through business activities has become more valuable than the business activities themselves. Just thinking about that line blew my mind a little bit, but he did say that that's heralding a new era, which he calls the extreme data economy. It's a great interview with so many valuable takeaways about something that all businesses can relate to in a world where data is widely considered to be the new gold, while equally going from the biggest asset to the biggest liability in some cases too. But rather than reveal too much about today's interview, let's buckle up and hold on tight because it's time for me to beam your ears all the way to California so we can speak with Paul Appleby, CEO at Kinetica. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Paul. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Oh, thanks, Neil, and great to be here. Wow, where do I start? I've had an incredible journey and the opportunity to work with some of the world's leading technology companies, but I've also had the opportunity to get out of technology and work in media and in financial services as well. So I've had a pretty broad-ranging set of experiences.
Fantastic. Now, you're not only the CEO, but also a board member of Kinetica, where you're responsible for accelerating Kinetica's growth and furthering the company's international expansion. But for anyone just tuning in here, hearing about Kinetica for the very first time, can you just offer a little overview of what Kinetica is and what problems it solves for your customers? And of course, what makes it different from everything else out there?
Yeah, Neil, I'll tell you what got me really excited about Kinetica is that over particularly the last 5 years, as I've traveled around the globe and worked with some of the world's largest companies, we've all heard this ongoing narrative of digital disruption and digital business, the fourth industrial revolution or the industrial internet. And as I got to know and understand the challenges that confronted different industries, I realized that whether you're talking the automotive industry, the media industry, financial services, these challenges ultimately were all about data and solving huge complex data problems and in fact leveraging the power of data to create new business models. So what got me excited about Kinetica was the fact that here was a young company with an incredibly innovative technology that was designed to do just that. So what I came on board to do was sort of take this incredible technology that our two founders had developed out of a federal government project, actually, and the early fantastic customer base that we had of some of the world's largest companies, and grow and scale the business not only domestically but surprisingly for a company so young internationally.
I recently read that you believe that the data that is generated through business activities has become more valuable than the business activities themselves, and that is going to herald in a new era which you call the extreme data economy. Can you expand on that a little and the story behind that belief?
Yeah, it was interesting. I had the opportunity to attend the World Economic Forum for the last 5 years, and I think it was this year that Angela Merkel, speaking of the German economy, said effectively that Germany needed to shift from being a manufacturing and distribution engineering-driven economy to being a data-driven economy, world leader, that data in and of itself is an incredibly valuable resource and that business models of the future will be driven around data. The way we engage with our customers, the way automation and robotics are affected, the way that the autonomous vehicle is brought to life. All of these environments will be data driven, and as a consequence, we're moving into an era where data in and of itself is going to be valued as an asset just the way other assets are valued by companies and by countries. And how we develop business models and economic models to leverage that data will define the winners and losers.
It really does. And it also seems that businesses are increasingly facing enormous challenges now, addressing massive sets of complex data at unparalleled speed, making it almost impossible to maintain business in motion. So where do you begin to help businesses overcome challenges like this with Kinetica? And also, what kind of technology is making it easier for you guys to do that?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question. When we come to working with the world's largest banks or the world's largest telcos, they've had problems to solve for years, but because of the nature of the problem you've just described, not only the volume, but the velocity and the variety of this data and the incredible variety of its uses, they've never been able to actually take the entire corpus of data, if you like, all of the historic data and all of the real-time streaming data, smash those together and drive real-time insights. And what Kinetica has been able to do is develop a technology that takes not only historic data, but real-time streaming data, structured and unstructured data from multiple different sources, and run real-time analytics against that data that allows real-time insights and real-time actions. And we've been able to do that through a combination of proprietary technologies that our founders developed, but leveraging the power of NVIDIA's GPU chip technology.
So can you also tell me a little bit more about your belief that it's incumbent upon business leaders and technologists to evolve their thinking around data to the actual point where data shapes their business strategy, drives investments, and enables that hyper growth that they're all searching for?
Yeah, well, I mean, I could pick so many examples, but let's pick a couple that are topical. Let's talk about customer 360 and really truly developing that kind of intimate one-to-one relationship that companies and marketers have always wanted to have with their customers. If you're in a large-scale business, a bank, an insurance company, a telco, or in a business that's somewhat disintermediated from its customers, like the pharmaceutical industry, it's very, very hard to develop a meaningful one-to-one relationship with the customer. Data allows you to do that by being able to capture not only transactional data and the relationship data that you have with the customer, but mapping that together with location data, if and when, of course, the customers permit you to use that data, and of course with social data, you're able to develop a truly unique picture of the customer. But what's important is not only developing that unique picture of the customer, but in many instances, the benefit of that data is tied to an event that occurs in time and in space. And it has to happen in real time. So, if there's an opportunity, the opportunity is in the now, and then you need to act in the now. So not only do you need to know about the customer in that total 360-degree manner, but the ability to act and make offers and recommendations in real time. And, that's one area where we're solving very complex problems for one of the world's largest retailers, and in fact, one of the world's largest banks.
So you have over 25 years of experience successfully building and leading global teams for industry brands and startups alike. For example, we've got Oracle Corporation, Travelex, and the CEO of GoCorp and director of both financial services and telecommunications for SAP. And they're just a few of the big names attached to your good selves there. But I'm curious, what are the biggest changes that you've seen in your career? And how is technology changing the business landscape?
Neil, you make me sound old.
Not at all.
I'm having fun running an incredible business and an amazing team of innovators. But what I'd say, Neil, is that there are a lot of things we could talk about. We could go down the rabbit hole of technology. But what I'd say today, more than ever before, companies that sell to businesses, in other words, in the B2B space, particularly in the enterprise, are realizing that it's not the technology that's important. It's the problem you solve for the customer. So when you look at Kinetica today, the way we present ourselves in the market has changed radically. We don't talk about the technical features of our product and those things that differentiate us from our competitors. We talk about how we're helping some of the world's leading auto manufacturers solve the data challenges around the connected car. We talk about how we're helping some of the world's biggest banks solve challenges around real-time risk and anomaly detection for fraud, et cetera, as you go through the industry. So we actually like today, and our customers certainly demand that we address their business challenges, and we come to the table with technologies that help them solve these really, really complex problems.
So you mentioned You mentioned there talking about the problem rather than the technology. So when CEOs and business leaders come to you for help, are there any particular trends or common challenges that are affecting businesses of all sizes? And indeed, from those challenges and those trends, how are you helping them?
There's a growing understanding that data is the business, and not only is it important to understand how better to manage data, but more importantly than that, how better to unlock the value of that data. That's certainly one of the things that we're seeing as a massive trend, is this growing understanding that ultimately data is the business, and it doesn't matter which industry you're in. The other thing I would certainly say that we're seeing is that companies are beginning to understand the power of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And what CEOs and boards are struggling with is how you operationalize these incredible technologies, because the world of the business and the transacting business and the data scientists in many ways have been somewhat separate. So how do you bring data science into the mainstream? And this is something we're working with companies all over the world in many different industries of how you take data science into the mainstream and deploy models at large scale in a very well-governed and orchestrated manner. A big part of the reason for that is not only are we seeing the adoption or more broad-based adoption of AI and ML, but we're also seeing a greater understanding of the need for at least some of these workloads to be processed at the edge on devices that are not centralized. So a great example of that, of course, going back to the earlier comment, is the area of autonomous vehicles. Ultimately, a significant amount of the processing will need to be done at the edge in the car itself, and each car, in fact, will need to become a supercomputer on wheels.
I'm glad you mentioned autonomous vehicles there, because when I was researching you guys, I quickly came across a great story about Kinetica and how it's mapping the future of the automotive industry. I mean, all powered by extreme data. Is that something you can expand on?
Yeah, I mean, let's sit down and look at the challenges of autonomous vehicles, or even just more broadly, the connected car. As we start to realize how much data a vehicle generates, the challenges with actually getting to truly autonomous vehicles are not engineering challenges. The engineering challenges have broadly been solved. They're data challenges, because once you have millions of cars generating terabytes of data a day, the cellular networks are completely incapable of processing those volumes of data. So what's implicit in that is that a whole bunch of the processing needs to occur at the edge. So what we're doing is we're helping companies determine which workloads need to be processed in the vehicle to allow truly safe autonomous functioning and regulatory reporting, and which workloads and processes need to be managed centrally. And how, in fact, you leverage, I suppose, almost a hive-like structure of learning and modeling. So a really fascinating and exciting area of helping the auto industry evolve. So being at the epicenter of connected car, electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles is a pretty exciting time, and we're very, very proud to be working with some of the world's leading manufacturers.
Fantastic. So is there anything else that you can share with us about what other projects you're working on? And also maybe your goals for the next 12 to 18 months or anything on the horizon?
What I'd say is in every industry, there's a massive data challenge, whether it's the mobile phone industry, leveraging the power of these tools to become far more efficient and effective in cell tower placement, to drive better signals and more efficient traffic through their cell tower infrastructure, whether it's working with some of the world's leading pharmaceutical companies like GSK, where we're involved in a project with a number of other suppliers in helping them radically shorten the cycle time to bring new medicines to market, which is a really, really exciting project. So for us, it's really about looking at those industries where the biggest data challenges are that are going to have the most significant impact on their business, and working with those companies and growing and scaling those discussions. So that's a huge focus for us. The other thing I'd say as a young company, there are kind of two other things that we're focused on. Building out our ecosystem. We understand if we're going to solve these sorts of problems for some of the world's largest companies, we need to do that in partnership with other organizations. So we're working very hard on evolving those relationships with the likes of NVIDIA and Dell, Accenture, and others. And the final thing I'd say is what's happened, because these challenges not only cross industry boundaries, they cross geographic boundaries. Our customers very quickly pulled us offshore and into both Europe and in Asia, where we have a presence in Germany, in the UK, and in Asia, in Indonesia, Singapore, Korea, and Japan. What we'll be looking to do over the next 18 months is looking to grow not only our domestic presence in the US, but continue to grow our international presence to support these large-scale customers.
Well, a huge thank you for coming on the show and talking with me today. Before I do let you go, could I just ask that you remind the listeners of where they can find you online, and also contact a member of your team if they have any questions about our conversation today?
Yeah, please reach out to us at Kinetica.com. We actually run a series of webinars. We're really big fans of getting a dialogue going with the community, and would encourage you to participate in one of those. But also feel free to reach out to me. You can get me at paul@kinetica.com, and I'll be happy to address any questions or any inquiries that any of your listeners have.
Well, one of the things we didn't touch upon, and it's one of the big reasons I invited you on here today, is because you are a young company, but I love the story behind it, which we didn't really touch on, which was how nothing existed in the market that met your needs. And it was data warehouses were too slow, no SQL wouldn't scale, and premium in-memory solutions promised real-time, but just didn't deliver. And off the back of that, you created a solution. And it's fantastic to see how well you're doing with that. So a big thank you for coming on and sharing that story with me today.
Excellent. Thanks again, Neil. I appreciate it.
I completely agree with so much of what Paul said today, and his advice is just so insightful. As he said, businesses are increasingly facing enormous challenges addressing massive sets of complex data at unparalleled speed. And that fact alone makes it almost impossible to maintain business in motion. And in order to understand this era of a data-driven economy, Paul believes it is incumbent upon most business leaders and technologists to evolve their thinking around data to the point where data shapes business strategies, drives investments, and ultimately enables hyper-growth. Wise words indeed from today's guest. But what are your thoughts and experiences and insights? You might agree or disagree with everything that I or Paul have said today, but I know for certain that your opinion and your voice matters. So email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, tweet me at Neil C. Hughes. Remember, you can leave me a virtual voicemail as well on my website, techblogwriter.co.uk. I'm the easiest guy in the world to get hold of, and as long as you don't begin your message with a sales pitch, you'll always get a reply from me. That's my promise. So it feels good to be back in the saddle. We're going through somewhat of a growth spurt at the moment, with thousands of new listeners joining us every week. And we've got some pretty big names on the show this week too. But it's time for me to go now. So a big thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.